Welcome to another American TESOL Presents Free Friday webinars. We're here every Friday. I'm your hostess, Shelly Sanchez Terrell. I'm currently in Texas, but we come to you from all over the world. We have hundreds of recordings. If you go to americantesol.com, you can look at our face-to-face and also online certification programs for teaching young children, for teaching with English with technology, and for also just getting a TESOL certification. And these different certifications allow you to teach around the world. But we do offer these webinars for free every Friday. We have for several years, I think 4 or 5 years. And you can find the resources if you go to shellyterrell.com/fieldtrips. We're heading into the summer for a lot of teachers, and a great resource to have or great knowledge or experience is on how to plan field trips. I've been doing this for many years. Since 1996, I began my teaching internship as an intern opening up a hands-on science treehouse in San Antonio, Texas. And I learned a lot about creating different experiences, engaging experiences for learners who are visiting museums, and also as part of our museum camp, and then several years after doing bilingual camps for students. I had to plan the itinerary, I had to plan where we were going and make sure it aligned to what we were learning. So I think that's really important, and I want to share those tips with you today, hopefully within 30 minutes. But I think field trips can be really engaging. I've had the kind of field trips where I didn't plan them well, or that I went on field trips with different teachers. And I remember being young, I didn't get much of an impression for that field trip. And one of the reasons why is because I didn't have any direction. Basically, we were just taken on the field trip, but we weren't given any activities. We weren't given anything that we had to be responsible, any knowledge we had to learn or be responsible for. And I think that's really important, that we do give our students a focus. We give them tips, and also we get them to do activities. A field trip isn't just a way to spend the day, it's a learning opportunity, and we should count it like we are teaching in the classroom. What that means is that it's a lesson, we have pre-task, it has during the field trip what you do, and then it has what you're creating or doing with the knowledge you learned from the field trip. There are many places where you can go locally to find a field trip if you're looking at physical ones, and you're looking for really inexpensive places. Try looking at city services. We took the students to the San Antonio water system. That was a great field trip. One of the great field trips was actually the landfill place, recycling plants. There's where you can sometimes call the city and see things like a traffic system, and you can see all the traffic, huge screens, and students get really interested in things like that. Of course, museums, landmarks, the very popular destinations are all really good. Factories are really awesome. One of my favorite field trips, and one of the best rated field trips for elementary students when they were young, was the buttercrust factory field trip. And at the end, we got to learn how they made. We got to see all the machines and everything went behind making buttercrust bread. But the greatest part was at the end, they gave us each a great fresh piece of bread with butter. And I remember how good, I still remember how good that piece of bread with butter was. And it was just fantastic. There's a lot of local businesses. So if you're teaching something like geography, history, engineering, we did a whole entire session on go on a green screen, and they pretended to give the forecast with one of the local and famous meteorologists. We also worked with a climatologist that happened to be a professor at one of the schools. You can visit, for example, different universities have their own galleries, they have their own labs, so you can be very creative when trips. When you decide to plan a field trip, it's always best if you family take a night out or something something a day out and really go visit the site, because until you visit the site, until you talk to the people, definitely talk with people, then you're not going to know of all the learning opportunities available. So for example, when I talked with the people at the landfill, they had a whole learning packet for the students that we got. They got to talk to an engineer. We got to decide what was the focus of the trip. And so the students really got a meaningful experience. They got to ask questions and things like that. If you plan, you can plan activities with a site expert. Now, site experts doesn't only have to be the people working there. For example, when I worked at the Whitty Museum, which was the Natural Science and History Museum, and then we also had the HEB Science Treehouse, we also had docents, and some of our docents had been there for years, and they were much older docents, and so they had so much incredible knowledge of just the exhibits, Texas, and just so many different things. And sometimes we had a lot of local exhibits. So if you find, there were some docents that were definitely some of the more popular ones with the guests. And if you find a docent that you like, that gives you some great knowledge that you meet, then you can find out their schedule, and then you can ask them to be, when they're available. Maybe they can do the same kind of tour they did with you if you were very impressed. You can plan it with the docent. So there can be different types of experts. When you do work with a docent or an expert, have it to where the kids actually do something. We've had in the past where a paleontologist has worked with students to look for things like, the students looked for, on the ground, the students looked for Texas hearts, which were a type of fossil, and it was very focused, and they looked for that. We had another expert who took the students on the ground, and we got them prepared and dressed for the trip, which is also very important that they wear the right attire for the trip. And what they did was they actually made adobe. They made adobe bricks. So there's different types of activities. They've created dye. They've made sandals from plants. So the students have done. They've done intercultural Native American dances. I mean, our students really had an incredible time learning. So there's so many different types of activities that you can do depending on what the lesson plan is, or what's the objectives, what you want them to learn and gather from the trip. Many of the different field trips will have websites, and these websites are full of resources, handouts, apps, games, activities, all kinds of great goodies if you go to the free website. And these are ways to get, these are pre-tasks. These are ways to get your students excited, energized about the field trip. And it's also giving them a foundation. It's letting them know, okay, this is what we're going to see. These are the possible exhibits. You can have students do things with that, even if they're playing, for example, a game from the website. That game should focus on, what are the exhibits they're going to go see. Or perhaps you can find some handouts that they can take during the field trip. Sometimes a lot of these websites will have scavenger hunts. Sometimes they'll have where they have the virtual tour, so the students can go on the virtual tour first, and then they're able to look and find things with and focus on the subject matter experts at the actual site. But at least they'll have some of that background knowledge, so when they go and they see it and they touch it and they do activities at the actual museum, they'll actually be able to um, they'll be able to reinforce that knowledge. Another important thing to look for when you do go check on a website is the schedule. So you want to schedule on a map. And the reason why is, at my museum, we had demonstrations, we had different dances, skits, different types of guest experts who would come on, but these were on different days. So you might want to go because you're looking at a particular, it's best that you don't get disappointed because you didn't get the right tickets, or you didn't RSVP for a special exhibit, or you went on a day that the show wasn't there. So it's really important that you do that. I will remind you that you can find all of the recordings. Usually we do the recordings a day later. It's at the YouTube channel, youtube.com/ATESOL. And then you also have, for example, you can go to americantesol.com/blogger, and we also share the recordings there. But usually they're a week later, so just letting you know. I'm going to show you one example of a website. There's actually thousands depending on where you go. And not just for museums, this is for state parks, national parks, for let's say that you're going to a snake farm, an alligator farm, a rock quarry. I mean, there's many places you can go, and they have a website and they'll give you links, and you can see just the variety of resources here for the Smithsonian. The Smithsonian has, they have a 3D Explorer online. They have traveling exhibit service. And this is for educators. They give you the different types of exhibits. They give you some background of the exhibits. And they give you so much activities and lesson plans as well. You can get them really excited with these ideas. This can be the foundation. And for example, if you go to the Smithsonian, so don't look only at the teachers section, look at the student section. So I usually tend to go to the kids section. So over here, the Smithsonian has a kids section. And in the kids section, you can see here where students, one activity is they design a Puerto Rican carnival. They design a mask for the Puerto Rican carnival. They have activity sheets that the students can learn and print and do things from. But they also have games. They have online games that the students can play to learn about different activities as well. One way to really get your students to be engaged and also focused when they are on the field trip is to give them activities that they can do with their mobile device. Now, it's important that we give them activities that they have something to do, because if not, and they're just with their mobile device, then they're not going to be, they might be looking at their social networks or something. So you might want to download a few apps ahead of time and make sure that it's offline if you don't trust your students enough. You can do that, or you can say, okay, during this time in the exhibit, it is important, give them little times and then say, okay, you have to turn it off. But you do have to make sure too that wherever you go at a natural as an outdoor park, usually it's not a big deal to have a mobile device. They usually encourage it. But at some museums and art galleries, of course, they don't want you to take pictures. They don't want you to have a mobile device. So that's something that you have to make sure that whether or not that's even allowed. I know in like the British Library, things like that, places like that, they do have it, and they want you to interact by QR codes and things like that. So most museums also have an app. Once again, I'll show you an example from the Smithsonian. There's hundreds of free apps. If you go to if you go to the teacher guide, actually, the last article that I just printed today actually has a list of about 50. It has like different types of, I think there's, it has like over 10,000 apps that you can get for Android, museum apps for Androids. There's a list of there. There's over 10,000. And then there's also one list for, there's just a general list as well, a 20. But usually, depending on the site where you go, you can just look on your app store and just put in the name of the site, and then you'll be able to find whether it be something like maybe you're going to see the Hall of Fame of something. Even those sites will have it, or you're going to see Dinosaur World or a place like that. They'll have a website as well. Great thing about websites is they provide you with so many engaging experiences. So for example, you can have where your website has where they can look at things in augmented reality. So that's what the Smithsonian one offers, where you can see things in augmented reality. How very cool is that? They have podcasts for the different exhibits. They'll have experts they interviewed who talk about the exhibit, give more information. They'll also give a link to the mobile website. So there are different ways. Some of them have a virtual tours. They'll have where you can hear things, you can listen on the phone, and that's great because some sites you go to, if you got it ahead of time, then it's free. Sometimes if you go to the museum and you buy it there, you can buy like a little recorder there, but that's not free. It'll be more expensive. So it can save you some money if you do look at the app ahead of time, even if it's you that's looking at the app. And what I do is I'll just delete it later. Here are a few general apps that are great for visiting different places around the world, some famous spots, including museums. Here Planet is for both iOS and Android, and it has audio guides. It has audio information about tons of museums, tons of different sites all around the world. So Here Planet, I would check there if you're looking for an audio guide. And an audio guide sometimes is really good to improve listening skills for language learners, to really get them to pay attention and have that listening activity. And it's important that we do have activities so that way they do something with the information and they're responsible for it, which is why I like the iPlan field trips. So iPlan field trips has a little calendar that you can put, but it's very simple. And what it does is it asks where the destination is. The students fill that out. And then they have to put what they did and what they saw. And they can talk or they can type, so they can practice their writing and their speaking skills with this particular app. It's available on the web, iOS, Android, and Kindle. So it is for various platforms for free. This one I particularly liked. This is a new one I found out about this week, and I thought it was really interesting. What this is Poetic Places. It's for various web, iOS, Android, Kindle. And what it does is wherever you are, it'll have poetry that is associated with that historic site, that museum, that exhibit, that landmark. So I think that's really wonderful that students get to hear somebody's emotional poem or impression through a poem about the events that took place there. So Poetic Places, it's a free app, but it's also online as well. This one is really fun. I wish it had a lot more museums who participated, but this is Museum Hunt is an iOS app. It might be for Android now too, but what it does is you can find scavenger hunt games, all kinds of games, and they time students. So they keep students focused because the students have that particular time to be able to be there. So what you do is you look up whatever the place is. For MoMA, for example, the Museum of Modern Art, they have like 5 or 6 different games, depending on the floor. They have a game for each floor. It's a scavenger hunt, and so it gives them the instructions right away. This one's for the 5th floor. And then it gives really simple instructions that language learners can follow. It's just a sentence, so you can go over it with them beforehand if you want. What it does is it says, come to the 5th floor by the elevator. It gives them instructions and things like that. It says, how many stars are in my night? And the students have so many seconds to answer this question. And then they can click and they can decide which museum they're at, and it just gives them a series, but it keeps them engaged, it keeps them focused. If you have different chaperones, and I do think it's a great idea to have parents as chaperones. If you have parents, for example, or if you have guardians or even older sisters and brothers, they can walk with a group, and then you all don't have to do the same thing at once. You can go to different types of they can do it on their own, the different scavenger hunts, and you can see what information is found and things like that. Exactly, Peggy. Peggy says, George says the chaperones are essential, and I believe that. In here, I'm going to show you a site at teacherbootcamp.com where I've listed several different guidelines and resources for chaperones. I think this site in particularly, and I didn't put it up here, but there's this site from a school. It even gives a slideshow on what chaperones should do, and the do's and don'ts. So it's really, really nice. Um, fieldtripper.com, that's for places you go around the Golden State Bridge, or maybe you go see the biggest boot in the world, or maybe you go visit Paris, Texas, and see the Texas Eiffel Tower instead. Then you can find information with Field Tripper. It gives you historical sites, it gives you past photos, which I think are really, really cool. So students can see what it looked like before and several years after what it looks like. Things like if you go visit Mount Rushmore, some kind of landmark like that. So Field Tripper is good for those kind of different activities and sites. You can learn a lot and do a lot with QR codes. And this is actually from the digital a British library. I went and I explored it, and it was one of the most fascinating libraries that really incorporated technology. So I love QR codes. I think they're great. My favorite app for working with QR codes is QuickMark. Is for QuickMark is for iOS. It's for Android as well. And the reason that I prefer that versus the other ones is because QuickMark actually likes has where you can create. You not only scan the QR code, but you can also create QR codes, and that's an activity suggestion for your students that they can create a QR code for an exhibit. So if you can work with the local museum or state park or national park, a lot of times they have their information, and you can see where the paper is fading and stuff. So they would really appreciate if a group of students got together and took all of that paperwork and made it into an app, like a presentation or something. Nowadays, there are different programs like S'more that you can attach to it. It could be like a museum flyer that attaches to that QR code for the student. It could be, for example, Telegami. Some students create QR codes for the Telegami. It could be attached to something like a digital poster tour or something like that. So you can also have different scavenger hunts at the museum that you create yourself in case you can't find one on Museum Hunt. So Click a Clue is a way to get students to look at particular exhibits and go on a scavenger hunt. Goose Chase is an app as well. Both of them are free. Click a Clue and Goose Chase are both free. So is QRWild.com, but Click a Clue and Goose Chase are are apps. They're so you can create them on a mobile device. They're really easy and quick. I think Goose Chase looks really, really simple to use. Then there's QRWild.com. You do that through the web. The QRWild.com, I think it's still great, but it's a lot less user friendly. But you do use QR codes. So let's look at some activities. I already let you know a few activities, and so I'll go over these. One is for students, if they're allowed to, like let's say they're at the zoo, aquarium, or something, they can take little video shots. They can take a series of shots, videos or photos to create a brochure, a flyer, a poster, a commercial, or even like a news broadcast. So they just take little tiny clips. I've seen students create public service announcements with Vine. Vine is a video producing app. I think Instagram's a lot better. A lot of students now are on Instagram. It's one of the biggest networks. You can take up to a minute video. But you can take photos, and in these photos, you have them make, for example, a flyer for the museum or brochures, or do like a little ad about that exhibit, why they love that exhibit. You can assign two students to be partners, and that's always good. It's great to get students to be partners or pairs when they're at a museum. One of the reasons why is because you want to make sure that they don't lose each other. Okay, so they can, for safety reasons, it's really great. And it's easier for a student to come up to you and say, I can't find my partner, than for you to kind of take a look at, all the kids and students and even parents. Parents don't work with these students every day, so these some parents might miss a child within their roster. So they can do this. You can have, so there's this thing on parentschoice.org, and it gives a lot of different types of I'm going to try to find it for you, but parentschoice.org. I'm going to give you the article, and it's really great because Parents Choice has a list of different field trips. Let me go ahead and give you that. But if you go, it gives you field trip games. And there's one like called I Spy with an Eye. They tell you how to do. This one was one of my favorites. It's a postcard treasure hunt. And what it is that you go to the gift store ahead of time. You spend, usually they have the postcards that are really inexpensive at a lot of gift stores. And then what you do is you go ahead and you take 2 or 3 pictures. You give it to the pair of students, and the students run and they try to find. That's the exhibits or the that they're responsible for, and they try to find them somewhere around with a chaperone, of course. And that's what their campaign or brochure or flyer or video will be about, or their poster. So that's a really fun way, I think, is to have, and then they walk away with that. They get to decide which postcard they would like to keep. That's kind of can be like a gift in the memento from the museum. So those are usually pretty inexpensive, and I thought that was a particularly good one. Eduscapes has a list of over like 35 digital and virtual museums. Now, a lot of the links don't work, but if you click on it, you'll get sent to, you can just crop off the end part of the URL. Like, for example, here it says edscapes.com, tap. Take out the rest, take it like the tap and all that of whatever link you go to, and it takes you to that website, and then you can look on that website and see where they have. It's just that sometimes the museums change the actual location, but they still have a virtual one. So I found that this one was the most up-to-date site that had links. And just go to the main link. If you go to the main link from this particular website, then you'll be able to. So in other words, if it says smithsonian.com/blah, blah, 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 blah will probably not work. But if you take out the blah, 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 then smithsonian.com is going to work, and you're going to see it'll say virtual or 3D or augmented reality or virtual reality or virtual tour. Howcast.com has a great way to make a pen and paper type of scavenger hunt. That's really simple. It's really, really simple for students in general, so that you can look at that as well. One idea is for students to create an interactive map. If the museum has a map already, then get your students with ThingLink. They can even make it virtual reality. So that's really cool. But they don't have to make it virtual reality. ThingLink is a free web tool. Your students can each be responsible for a pin, and what they do is they have a picture that they were supposed to take of the exhibit if they're allowed to. And then they have to give information, a video, and then they can have another where they put information like key learning points of that particular website. And the great part is then what you can do is you can make a QR code for this, and you can see if the museum would like to include that QR code on their regular maps. So then then the museum itself has the regular map, and they say, oh, you want to make it interactive? Well, here's this little QR code, and you just scan it. Guests and patrons can scan it, and they can see what the students have created. So that could be really neat. Museums would like that. S'more, your students can make a flyer about the museum here. They can add pictures, they can add little facts, they can add some history, some background research, and links to that research, so they're citing the resource. Byteslide.com has a lot of ways that you can post like animal pictures. You can put like a whole entire, even Bunsy, EduBunsy does really good for that as well. They're both really good. Even EduGlockster is good for this as well, to make a little digital poster of whatever they saw. They can put telegamis. The telegamis, they have the picture that they did. If they did a collage, then that's good too. They put that, they upload that on the background, and then they create this little avatar who acts as a tour guide, a virtual tour guide, and lets patrons know like what they learned about the museum or the exhibit or the landmark or the site. Your students can create their own galleries, virtual galleries, by using something like Photofunia. Photofunia has a lot of different galleries, templates for your students for their own artwork. Let's say you can't afford a field trip. A lot of us can't. So instead of just going on a face-to-face field trip, if that's something you can't do, you can definitely go on a virtual one. We're actually going to do, I'll do in a few weeks, one dedicated to virtual field trips, augmented reality, and also virtual reality as well. So I'll go more into depth with that. But these are the three sites I do recommend. GoogleItTrips.org, Google Earth, that's an app. That's also, a site you can download and things like that. Google.com/cultural institute as well. It has a lot of art. It has places, world wonders. It has lesson plans for teachers and everything. I just recently got my Google Cardboard, and I was actually going to show you that, and I totally forgot to grab it. But you can take virtual reality field trips with Google Cardboard. A lot of museums now are starting to integrate virtual reality and augmented reality. So a few general tips before we go. Well, it's important you do get parent permission. And so what I've done is I've actually created this parent consent form that you can go ahead and you can copy and you can edit it. So I'm going to go ahead and do that for you. I think it's the, and maybe this is not. Well, I hope that's the right one. I don't know. Oh, thank you, Peggy. I hope it goes to that one. It's good to have a schedule. If you're designing a summer camp or something, this is the one that I designed for when I was doing my summer camps. It had the different, what we would be wearing, what activities we're doing, where we would be visiting, on things like that. That's good to give ahead of time. If you do have a parent permission form, if you have all of this scheduled ahead of time within the year, that's why it's good to schedule now, because then you have all this, and that parent permission form can remain with you. It can be for all of the trips, okay? And so then what you do is you get a backpack, and then you always keep a folder with the map, with all of the student consent forms. On my parent permission form, I'll go back to that. Wrong way. You'll notice where it asks, does your child have any allergies or medical conditions? If so, what kind of medications do they carry for this? Are they prescriptions from a doctor? And what are the instructions for this particular medical condition or treating it and stuff, which are really important because students nowadays will get sent to alternative schools or different schools for carrying drugs that were not prescribed. So it's important that we know this information ahead of time, because that can be very, very big offense. So it's really important. Safety is key. That is something that I found out many, many times when I was with kids. Always take a safety kit. Always make sure that students are appropriately dressed. Always bring things like we had, for example, a backpack, our field trip backpack with with the safety kit, with the CPR. Made sure that it had all the roster of students to always check that out. It also had the parent contact information. So that permission slip went with us everywhere. It was for the whole summer. We had it in one folder. We always had it. It also had receipts and had confirmations for the places we were going. And then we would take an ice chest, and the ice chest would always have water, and we'd have some kind of snack. And the reason why is because if students can get dehydrated, especially if they're outside, if they're walking. There were times I've had to carry students, so it's really important that you have all of that information. It's good to have someone on board that is certified, first aid certified, CPR certified, but also it's good to teach students safety and first aid, so that way you can prevent some accidents as well. So that can be something that you do before ever going on any trip. They can even do their own PSAs, public service announcements, or safety posters on, what do we do at a field trip? Do we all wear the same color? What is the uniform? Somebody could do a presentation on, this is the t-shirt we always wear on a field trip. This is the hat. We always meet at a central point. This is the rule. If you get lost, this is what you do. So it's always good to have those things covered. You can do that even in the class period where you discuss all of that. So students the rest of the year will be safe. So thank you so much for attending. I hope you got some great information, and we will see you next week.